invited me twice before Congress to testify for the beautiful bill that's going to change crime in the district. If you kill somebody, okay, you take a life, you do life. Just that simple. If you do a harsh crime, you do harsh time. Just that simple.
So that was a viral video that was actually sent to me by my wife, of all people, as it's made its rounds on regular ordinary social media, of a black grandmother and obviously a Trump supporter who decided to show up to this Trump event in order to talk about how she actually supports President Trump after her grandchild was murdered and she felt like she was ignored by the Democratic Party for a lengthy period of time. Now, of course, the reason why this clip ended up going viral is obvious. The woman has a lot of passion. She's clearly and obviously upset with the Democratic Party, and she gave a ringing endorsement for the National Guard being placed in the District of Columbia because after years of feeling like she was ignored, and specifically her grandchild's case was being ignored, somebody did something, and it is obviously being appreciated by this particular woman. And honestly, it's just a real, raw, honest moment. And yes, there are political implications of it. And yes, if you were to poll black grandmas or black women in general, they would mostly be against President Trump by an overwhelming margin. But this is the difference between actually what we see in the media painted about Trump's opinion on regular ordinary people and what his administration sometimes does really well, which is make that connection in a way that politicians typically don't. So I think it's important to talk about this. I think it's important to discuss this. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay.
So in this particular event, which is like a Black History Month event that President Trump is holding, he's talking up his policy of sending the National Guard into the District of Columbia in order to lower crime. However, I need you guys to understand a couple of bits of context that are absolutely crucial. And the first is the most obvious, that crime was actually already declining in the District of Columbia when the president decided to do this. Now, of course, even though it was declining, obviously the decline was significantly faster with the National Guard on the streets. And the reason for this is pretty obvious. It was something that we discovered with the Kansas City experiment, and that is visible presence of law enforcement disperses and disrupts crime and criminality. So yeah, the crime has dropped significantly more post the actual deployment of the Guard. However, the District of Columbia wasn't as bad as it was a couple of years ago when Trump decided to make this particular decision last year. So that context needs to be like actually said and stated for you guys out there in the audience, because I don't want you to give the impression that it was at like peak levels or peak post Black Lives Matter riot levels, and then it was driven down significantly. It was already going down, but it was driven down even further. And by the way, what I'm talking about in terms of crime for the most part is homicide stats, which are some of the easiest crimes to measure, because those were what was dropping prior to this. Because as we've talked about before, there was a scandal with the District of Columbia police where they may have been lowering certain other crimes in order to get them out of the statistics. So maybe crime was dropping in 2025, but it wasn't dropping at the rate that was actually stated by the Metro Police, because they were actually fudging the stats according to, again, those reports and the people who have said that they were ordered to make those changes. So again, all that context needs to be understood, and this is the setup for President Trump to introduce this woman who is a grandmother. I believe her name is Forlesia Cook, and obviously she is very grateful to President Trump because he's the first person, or his administration is, that made her feel like she was heard since the murder of her grandchild.
Come on. Thank you. Yes, you can. Thank you. So nice. I like her. Please.
I like him too. One thing I like about him, he keeps it real, just like Grandma. I appreciate that because I can trust him, because he tells exactly how he feels and what he thinks. Thank God for this president.
Now again, you have a nice little moment right there where she asks President Trump for a hug. He gives her the hug. He says that he likes her. And then she says, well, I like him too, because like Grandma, he keeps it real. And it seems like we're in for a jovial little event, but you can actually see a moment where like the emotion overwhelms her face. And yeah, she's actually going to drop some actual truth in this particular moment. And I think while this is not like a big change for how black voters are feeling about President Trump or how the the District of Columbia is feeling about President Trump, because make no mistake about it, it's one of the most left-wing places in the entire country. It does speak to something that we've often talked about on this channel, and I think this is worthy of highlighting, even separating out President Trump, the National Guard, and all those other factors that are involved in this story that many other creators would focus on.
I am filled, my cup runneth over, because he allowed his constituents, his people, to come to my house to interview me, to talk about the murder of my grandson. It seemed like nobody cared. I'm an advocate for murder. I marched, I rallied, I pulled out other families in the District of Columbia that had murders and did not have answers. Ooh. We marched and we rallied, and nobody heard me, Democrats.
So look, obviously you could hear the emotion in her voice when talking about her grandson, and I know some people are going to nitpick and say, oh, well, she said she's an advocate for murder when she obviously meant murder victims. So everybody just relax, grant the lady a little bit of a grace, because, you know, she's not exactly a public speaking professional or anything of the sort. But what I think she actually touched upon that's absolutely crucial with this particular sentiment is this idea that nobody seemed to care when her grandson was murdered, or when she connected with other people who had lost loved ones to regular ordinary street violence. And this is something that we all understand to be true, because unless the perpetrator and the victim align a certain way, it's never going to be an interesting story for the national media, for the Democratic Party. And of course, what I'm talking about is that unless the perpetrator is white or a police officer, there's no interest at all whatsoever, because there's nothing politically to be gained from these cases. So you have a lot of people, and again, 90+% of the black people that are murdered by other black people. And not only is that kind of tie, which we would expect between a racial group there, but it's also much higher, the per capita rates, than the murders of white people. But the media and of course the Democratic Party don't want to address that issue. They don't want to highlight that because they believe it reflects poorly on the black community. So a lot of these particular cases don't end up getting the attention that they deserve. They don't end up getting solved. The killer is out there to reoffend again, and the victims, who are again disproportionately black, those cases never see justice. This is what the woman is speaking to right here. This is why specifically she called out the Democratic Party, because again, unless it's a cop, unless it's a white person, unless it's a racialized angle, then there is no way, shape, or form that they're going to be all that interested in it. And of course, I will point out that DC, like many other left-wing areas, made cutbacks onto their law enforcement, did criminal justice reforms, and all sorts of other things post the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis that had nothing to do with their police department, and that ended up leading to what we call the George Floyd effect, which of course was disproportionately felt and paid for by the lives of black individuals. They lost their lives at extraordinarily higher rates when the murder rate jumped in this country, and it was due in large part to the fact that the police pulled back in these areas because they were deemed to be the villain, even though again, we all know this, but around 9 unarmed black people are shot and killed by the police each and every year. It is not statistically significant in a nation of 300 million, and even among those 9 individuals, a bunch of them are actively trying to arm themselves with the police officer's gun, like Michael Brown did, or they're driving a car at the police or doing something else that technically says they're unarmed, even though they're actively trying to arm themselves or actively present themselves as a deadly threat. So even that 9 or 11 number or 13 number in a really bad year is extraordinarily misleading, but the real cost of this is paid for in blood by people like her grandson, and that is absolutely tragic, and that is what she's highlighting right here, and that's what's absolutely crucial, especially again when you have left-wing people that actually believe at disproportionately high numbers that 9 people is actually over 1,000 or over 10,000 unarmed black people shot and killed by the police each and every year.
Until this Republican sent his constituents, his people out there to interview me in my home. Have you ever heard of a thing? Then they invited me twice before Congress to testify for the beautiful bill that's going to change crime in the district. If you kill somebody, okay, you take a life, you do life. Just that simple.
So this is one of the reasons why, if we actually fight on the issues where we have the moral high ground, where we're not only right on the policy, but we're right on the morality, and the messaging is so easy, it should be ridiculously easy to win. Because the left, when it comes to somebody committing a horrific crime, they're like, oh, but what about poverty? How'd they grow up? Evil white racism? Did that play a role in it? Oh my god, what do we do? How do we make the criminal into the victim? But instinctually, we all understand that the criminal, the perpetrator, is in fact the threat. They are the wrongdoer, and obviously something as simple and straightforward as you take a life, you do life, or you take a life, you lose your life, that seems to make sense intuitively to people. And yeah, this is one of the reasons why this was so powerful.
If you do a harsh crime, you do harsh time. Just that simple.
Again, the slogans are incredibly simple, and again, they match the actual content of good policy, so this should not be an issue that Republicans are ever losing on. You do a harsh crime, you do harsh time. It's that simple. She said it clearly, she said it obviously right there, and she ends up saying, and again, this is somebody who's on the ground, who understands how bad DC was post the Black Lives Matter riots, how it had gotten better, but then the Guard was deployed, which she still supports, but she knows full well that the Guard should have been deployed years ago when the problems were actually coming to the forefront in a much more significant way.
And then we need National Guard, and which we did years ago. He brought it on. I love him. I don't want to hear nothing you got to say about that racist stuff. And don't be looking at me on the news hating on me because I'm standing up for somebody that deserves to be standing up for. Get off the man's back. Let him do his job. He's doing the right thing. Back up off him.
Look, this woman's energy is very entertaining. The fact that she said, back up off of him, don't give me that racist stuff. I mean, it's pretty good stuff. This woman, good speaker. Honestly, when is she running for Congress? Where does she want to run for Congress? Because many of people would support her. And considering the terrible politicians that the Republicans will put up in certain important races, I feel like this woman understands the simple messaging part much more than your average Republican congressperson. And yeah, if she wants to run, I think a lot of people will support her.
Let him do his job. He's doing the right thing. Back up off him. And Grandma said it.
So again, she raps with back up off of him, and then Grandma said it, and honestly, they should have given her the mic in her hand, because that is a mic drop moment. She ends up saying goodbye to President Trump, and then just walks off the stage. And honestly, the way that they normally coordinate these events, typically they have this person stand for photos and whatnot, hang out for a little bit, but she was like, you know what? I came to do a job. I came to say the things that I needed to say. I'm done saying it. Peace out. You're done. And I honestly love it. I do appreciate it. I appreciate the emotion, and I feel incredibly horrible for this woman that she lost her grandson's life. And again, while that tragedy is probably the most important thing to her, what she did with it is absolutely amazing. And for our country, more important is to highlight the fact that those kind of cases never get the attention that she was able to bring to it. And the reason for that is because they don't fit neatly within a narrative that the media wants to tell. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. As per usual, if you like this video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social media. If you got negative comments, back up off me. Grandma said so. This has been me talking about this woman speaking up for President Trump. Till next time.